Hey guys, Tarke here, and this is my final Ascendancy breakdown video. I wanted to wait until the patch notes. I've made a very rough list of how I rank them in power. I'll quickly go through the power list, then I'll go individually through the Ascendancies where I feel like they need a little bit more sauce or a little bit more change, so on and so forth. So this kind of list that I've laid out here, I've put it into subcategories. So we have busted on no investment, basically very flexible, anything really works with it. Busted on no investment but specialist, so much the same as above, but this is generally for a much more niche part of the game. Busted but requires some investment, so specific gear setups, etc., bit of monies. Then excels in some limited cases but doesn't really outclass the higher tiers. Pretty self-explanatory. Then this is good but hard to justify, and then reworked by the way. So let's start off on busted on no investment. So Deadeye. The new Deadeye is very flexible, gathering wins, giving so much movement speed. This is 10% more action speed, up to 20%. And then you have Fast and Deadly, giving you double accuracy rating. This is a huge DPS node. Basically, these two combined just make it, and then having the access to stuff like extra proj is just really, really huge. This is solid for any Frostblades, Molten Strike, or bow-based, even Spectral Shield Throw-based. If you're doing stuff with anything scaling proj damage, this is just absolutely amazing. Jumping on over to Hierophant, next on the list. Hierophant is there because of Ritual Awakening, giving up to 50% increased placement speed, alongside Pursuit of Faith, giving an additional totem. Having 2 totems, and then 90% placement speed in all these little minor nodes, just makes the Hierophant just amazing, and nearly BIS for every single totem build, even for stuff like Righteous Fire totems or Ancestral Warchief totems. Having 2 extra totems and 90% placement speed just makes it super, super smooth. When you then factor in stuff like, jumped up Mom with extra damage taken, a bunch of flat mana, easy power endurance charge generation, and then for people who want to do self-cast, this whole Arcane Surgery, this is amazing. For most totem builds, I think you want to go Ritual of Awakening, Divine Guidance, and Conviction of Power, by the way. Inquisitor is basically unchanged. They made the Consecrated Ground slightly easier to proc on single target, and it will still be the de facto amazing go-to pick for anything crit. Still has attack and cast speed, making it one of the best mapping Ascendancies, and because of that, it is always just absolutely insane. Then Champion. So Champion is pretty OP. It has a few cool things you can do for it. So Worthy Foe is enemies you taunt take 20% increased damage. That is a 20% more multiplier. Enemies taunted by you cannot evade attacks. That is the Lycoste style effect. This also works in party play for allies, for any minion zombie shenanigans or whatever. Conqueror gives you a 100% chance to taunt on hit, so you're always taunting. If you're worried about accuracy, you could use a Warcry to proc it first. They've also reworked taunt on bosses, so you can actually taunt bosses now. This will still get slightly screwed over by some map mods, which reduce your chance to taunt. But when you have a 100% chance to taunt, reducing that by 50%, still having 50% chance to taunt on hit is loads. First to Strike, Last to Fall gives an additional 10% more damage, which is pretty powerful. It has Adrenaline, which is 100% increased damage, 25% attack cast and movement speed, and 10% Physmit. There are a few cool ways of instantly triggering this effect. It'd basically be something you'd do before bosses. You could weapon swap into some Midnight Bargains. You can have Blood Magic Auras. You can put Righteous Fire on and off. People will use this to get a little bit of extra damage on certain bosses. Even without that aspect of it, getting the hits always Intimidate is very strong. And Unstoppable Hero, giving 1k flat armor and evasion rating while you have Fortify, makes this node absolutely broken for leveling and makes you an absolute powerhouse. Unless you're a bow or a wander, or basically a build which can't normally get Fortify, I wouldn't take this 4-pointer. So most of melee builds will be going Worthy Foe, Unstoppable Hero, and First Strike, Last to Fall. And if you're doing something which can't normally get Fortify, you'll be going Worthy Foe and Fortitude. All around amazing for support builds and any attack-based build. So now coming down to busted on no investment but specialist, we have the Necromancer. Now, people were freaking out about offerings being cut in half. Yes, the offerings got cut in half, but just overall there is substantially more minion damage and minion quality of life being added into the core nodes. Puppet Master giving minion movement speed, a bunch of minion attack and cast speed, loads of extra minion damage being put in all the minor nodes, and then options for, you know, some skelly-based shenanigans and some zombie-based shenanigans. Personally, I wouldn't be too crazy to jump on the zombie skelly hype train, but people who want to do those kinds of builds, they're now better. And Commander of Darkness is basically the same. Meh. Yeah, it's really solid. Yes, you've lost some easy block cap. Yes, you've lost a little bit of attack, movement, cast speed, but you've gained a bunch of damage. Some people have said that SRS suffered the most from this, but for non-SRS summoners, it's just good. It's really good. It's still amazing. It will face roll everything on absolutely no investment whatsoever. We then have Thick Boy. Jug is looking pretty beefy. All of the nodes are pretty amazing, and that is good. Every single node here is really, really nice. Undeniable 1k flat accuracy, a bunch of good accuracy scaling. We have Oscarm, we have Anne's Might, we have the Helm, which gives you proj damage based on accuracy. We have loads of items which scale stuff based on accuracy. This is really good. Unstoppable gives you cannot be stunned. Movement speed cannot be slowed below base movement speed. Movement speed cannot be messed around with. Pretty good. I think most people will be doing like Undeniable, going down the endurance charge route, loads of free endurance charge generation. Unrelenting is stupid mitigation. You can quite easily get up to about 10-ish roughly endurance charges. So this node gives an additional 10% physical mitigation, 8% elemental damage reduction, and 40% chaos res. Pretty nuts. This node up here is nice for the damage and the AoE, but I think most people won't be taking it. Yes, having up to 50% increased AoE is pretty nice. That's the equivalent of like an AoE gem. But I think that most people will be doing something like Undeniable, Unrelenting, and then Unbreakable. Unbreakable gives 2% flat life regen, 5% reduced damage taken. That is just every kind of damage. So that's really nice. Comboed with this, you know, with 10 endurance charges, you've got 50% Physmit. And then 13% elemental, 55% physical mitigation and 13% flat elemental damage reduction before resistances, before factoring armor and stuff. It's really good. This also has the doubled armor node in it, and 1.5% of total physical damage prevented from hits in the past 10 seconds is regenerated as life. Basically, it's really nice, and just mitigation, anything Uber Lab, you can just walk in with no gear whatsoever. This will still be good for boss killing. It's not going to be the best mapping character because you haven't got really much attack speed going on here. Just a little bit going on there. So it won't be the fastest mapper, but it's very, very solid. Then we have a Cultist. Everything in a Cultist got buffed. Literally everything. The main things to look out for is Hexproof now exists. We have 25% curse effect being added to this pathway. Malediction also has enemies affected by it deal 10% reduced damage and take 10% increased damage. Having that extra 10% damage mitigation thrown in there, having the extra 25% curse effect makes this 4-pointer with Hexproof absolutely insane. Void Beacon, it gains some reduced life regen. Wicked Ward is unchanged, but still incredibly powerful. And Vile Bastion, they slapped 150 flat energy shield on it, doubled the energy shield recharge, and put cannot be stunned while you have energy shield. That's really OP. So if you want to do CI, or low life, or anything with energy shield, Malediction plus Vile Bastion is absolutely amazing. Void Beacon is great, but to be honest, these two are just shinier. And there is this, you know, power charge node. Personally, I think it's a little bit of a trap. Yes, if you are doing stuff like dual-wielding Voidy Boys, you know, up to 10 power charges, that's again like 50% AoE. It's nice, it's cool, but that is a very specific, very niche build, and in my opinion, these nodes are just more powerful. So yeah, really, really solid. Much the same as Juggernaut, though. Isn't that great for mapping because you haven't got anything in here which really boosts your map clear. But amazing for supports now. Amazing for just anything energy shield, curse, chaos related. Really, really PogChamp. Then we get into Ascendant. This is the messy one. I made a list at the bottom of like the BIS options in my opinion. So we have Necromancer now giving the 50% offering effect on you. That's really good. It has skill effect duration, really nice for builds which need skill effect duration. And it has the auras you cast grant the increased attack and cast speed. This makes Ascendant basically hands down one of the best supports and will overtake... random fart noises, will overtake nearly all Necro supports before, will now go Ascendant Necro. Combo this with the new Guardian, giving you auras you cast grant Physmit, and that's pretty good, especially with inbuilt Conduit and the increased effect of auras. Guardian Necro support is looking really nice and probably best for aura-based stuff. Outside of that, there's also Occultist giving 1 additional curse. Curse effect, energy shield recharge, and cannot be stunned while you have energy shield, which is also pretty darn good. We then have Trickster hiding over here with Frenzy and Power Charge generation, increased recovery, hits have a chance to proc the Void thing. It scales really silly with conversion skills. Cannot be stunned if you haven't been hit recently, and 15 flat mana regen per second if you've used a movement skill recently. Trickster's really good. Slayer, obviously very powerful for the life leech effects not removed at full life, the inbuilt cull, some free AoE, some free damage, and cannot take physical reflect. There was nothing in the patch notes about reflect, so reflect is still pretty meaningless. It's just, can your build not run reflect? Then don't run the map mods. If you're Slayer, then you can run the map mods. But Reflect is still pretty much a whatever thingy. Deadeye is another one to make note of just because of fire additional projectile, 2 inbuilt pierce. It then also has some damage in there, and moving while bleeding doesn't cause you to take extra damage. It's whatever. Mini ones to kind of look at. You've got Jug with the 1k accuracy, increased damage per endurance charge, some endurance charge generation, cannot be chilled, cannot be stunned. Hierophant giving 1 additional totem. Arcane Surge when you or your totems have hit an enemy with a spell. The one bad thing about it though is it has a mandatory 8% of damage is taken from mana before life. At first that seems amazing, but that inbuilt mind over meta actually messes up, for example, a ranged attack totem or generally any kind of attack based or just any kind of totem build that doesn't want to go mind over matter. This node screws with you a little bit. And then Assassin did get slightly nerfed down to only 1% base crit, but 1% base crit is still powerful. It has got some chance to poison, but if you're playing poison, you play actual Assassin. Some movement speed if you've killed recently, and damage from your crits cannot be reflected with power charge gen, but as previously mentioned, Reflect hasn't been reworked in any major way, so Reflect, who cares? So yeah. Necro, Occultist, Guardian, Trickster, Slayer, Deadeye, amazing. These 3, whatever. Back to the tier list. Ascendant's really good for anything which wants overleech or support. That was a massive little detour. Next on here, Saboteur. So people were very disappointed with the Saboteur rework, mostly because of the trap route. People wanted more of a trap rework. It still does give you 50% cooldown recovery of traps, which is still decent. Lightning Trap is still a very good skill, but the mine part is really what makes it. KB mines, Kinetic Blast mines, Glacial Cascade mines, some of the best budget map clear and boss clearing in the game, and now it has crazy sustain. Pyromaniac is amazing. When I saw this node, I was just like, oh! This is probably my favorite node in the entire thing, outside of maybe Tailwind off of Deadeye. But yeah, immune to Ignite. It doesn't seem that big, but immune to Ignite is really nice for anything energy shield based. Immune to Shock is just very nice survivability. 1% life regen per second. This up to 20% life regen. And one thing to note, that's for your mines and for your traps. They're not tied together. So with some funky shenanigans on bosses, you can like pre-throw some traps, then start laying your mines like a normal miner character. You can cheese up to like 30-40% regen realistically. Just for the average mine character while mapping or bossing, this is a huge survivability boost. And the 25% reduced mana cost of skills just smooths out the mana cost, because mana cost is very high on both traps and mines respectively. And then Born in the Shadows is another massive defensive boost. So, nearby enemies are blinded. Just nearby enemies are automatically blinded. Blind is a very underrated and very overpowered form of mitigation. Some free damage against blinded enemies, and it still has the chance to blind enemies on hit. So whatever Sab build you're doing, you are taking Born in the Shadows and Pyromaniac. If you're a miner, you then take Demolition Specialist. If you're a trapper, you then take Chain Reaction. Explosive Expert is nice, but trappers and miners don't need damage. Trappers and miners have insane damage. Don't take Explosive Expert. Don't do it. Then we have the Tricky Boy. So everyone was very frightened because of this one node, the whole chance to get non-chaos as chaos.
Is he autistic as fuck, or a genius?
Thank you, Rise, for ruining my video recording. Appreciate it, homie. It's still really powerful. It's still, on average, roughly like a 19-ish% more multiplier for 2 points is really good. With anything doing crazy conversion shenanigans, it is really big deeps, but it requires more specific stuff going into it now. So, still a very good 2-pointer, but it requires some cool setup to work. Escape Artist and Ghost Dance, giving ridiculous amounts of free energy shield and evasion. Again, very powerful, requires a very specific setup. That's why I say it's like busted on no investment, but fairly specialist. Swift Killer is OP, Weave the Arcane is OP, Patient Reaper is OP, Prolonged Pain is decent for anyone doing a dot build. The average, like, I just want to play a build, I don't know what I'm doing, go Harness the Void, Swift Killer, Weave the Arcane, Patient Reaper. The average Essence Drain Scorching Ray starter character, you'll be going Patient Reaper, Prolonged Pain, Weave the Arcane, Swift Killer, and then anyone doing like Queen of the Forest, ES shenanigans, you obviously take Escape Artist, then any mix of these two, based on what build you're doing. Trickster is still very good. This is still a very, very powerful node, despite the nerf. Then we get into the busted on some investment. Basically, both Pathfinder and Guardian, no surprise, are still very powerful Ascendancies, but they require very specific setup. I'm still very disappointed that nothing really happened to Master Surgeon and Master Herbalist. Master Herbalist is a whatever pretty boring node, and Master Surgeon should just be increased recovery during Flask Effect. That would make it way more interesting for regen and leech-based builds. It would make Righteous Fire Pathfinder have some interesting choices. They changed Nature's Boon, otherwise it's the same old Ascendancy. Nothing's really happening there. Then we have Guardian. Guardian, they made the little nodes a little bit more interesting, but it's the same old shenanigans. Also, another thing to note, since Ascendant got a lot of the Guardian Fizzmit shenanigans, a lot of low-life builds that was previously Guardian can now also be played as Ascendant, so you have a few more interesting options on the skill tree, but it's still really good. Here we have the excels in some limited cases, but doesn't really outclass the higher tiers. We'll start with Chieftain. Even for something like Ancestral Warchief Totems, I'm still leaning towards Hierophant, just because 2 extra totems and 90 placement speed is huge for mapping. Placement speed is the real thing which slows you down while mapping. Placement speed is really, really nice. You still do have the Totem Leech and the Totem Taunt. That will be one of the main appeals if you want to do like a budget Uber Lab farmer with Ancestral Warchief. Totem Taunt is nice. You also have some very free Fizz to Fire mitigation, so if you want to do some very budget Avatar of Fire style builds, it means you don't need the Zoth's Blood as much, because you can just use this plus Namahu's, and then you have a free next slot for Biscos, for example. Biscos are still overpowered, by the way. One small thing I will say about this, which annoys me quite a lot though, I really dislike that Namahu's Flame is a 2-pointer going into Hinakora's Death Fury. I feel like they should either swap these two nodes round or separate it into a 2-pointer and another 2-pointer. The reason why I say that is you want Hinakora's for the Fire Leech's life and the chance to cover enemies in Ash, which is a 20% more multiplier. The problem is this messes up Elemental Equilibrium for any build which wants to use Elemental Equilibrium, be it a Righteous Fire build on Shield Charge or an Explosive Arrow build. And for the people saying, but just use Brutality, If you're using Brutality, you then can't apply EE with that ability. So, yeah, it messes up some RF builds, and it stops you from doing...
Autistic as fuck, or a genius.
Rise, thank you again for trolling me during my little video. Fucking idiot. So it messes up some builds, but it's still very good, and 100% fire res, lol, JK, who needs fire res ever. We then have Gladiator. Gladiator is another one of those Ascendancies which got kind of messed up by the order of abilities. The main thing to note, this used to give you the physical explosions. They moved it to the 4-pointer now. You could just equip the pair of gloves, Hemophilia gloves, or you can waste 4 Ascendancy points. This is really bad in my opinion. This node is very strong, giving you lots of easy physical damage and block cap. Any Gladiator will most likely be going Violent Retaliation, Versatile Combatant, and Outmatch and Outlast. One thing to note, Blood in the Eyes does give you blind, but Violent Retaliation wants you to get hit. If you're blinding mobs, you're being hit less because they're blinded, so you'll stack up less fizz damage. So yeah, Violent Retaliation, Versatile Combatant, Outmatched and Outlast. Still good for budget block builds, but if you want just a really tanky character, I'd rather play a Jug, and I just think it's kind of outclassed by a lot of other things. We then have Assassin. Noxious Strike is OP. This is like a really stupid node. This makes poison builds, which are already good, much better. Poison builds still have the problem that you need to use like 5 very specific uniques, Dendrobate being the main one. But yeah, this is really good. You can do stupid poison damage. This is really, really good. Most poison builds will go Noxious Strike, Toxic Delivery, Opportunistic, and then 2 points on whatever, you don't really care. A little bit disappointed that this is still only max crit while at maximum power charges. But yeah, it's pretty good. It's not amazing, it's pretty good for just crit builds. You'd probably still rather go in Quiz. This gives you some movement speed if you've killed recently, makes it okay for mapping. But other Ascendancies can do more damage or have faster mapping. That's why I say it's good in some cases, not all cases. Then we have Slayer. Slayer dropped down a lot. If you remember, I used to have this as a tier 0 Ascendancy. Much like Gladiator, they put stuff in the wrong order. They also moved the Cannot Be Stunned onto Overwhelm, which is quite a big nerf. And because they've swapped the order of Bane of Legends and Brutal Fervor, even though they buffed the hell out of Impact, you now can't take Impact and keep the 20% cull or keeping the Overleech. So yeah, they messed it up. Basically, you're only ever taking these 2, and because they swapped the order around, it is substantially weaker while leveling, and feels pretty terrible until you get your Uberlab. So losing stun, feeling terrible until Uberlab, and everything else becoming better, I would nearly always rather play a Scion than a Slayer. That being said, Endless Hunger is still very powerful. The overkill damage leeched as life does open up some build possibilities. I played an Obliteration leech-based Righteous Fire Slayer. Stuff like that, leeching from stuff which is hard to leech from. Basically spellcasters in general. Really powerful. Stop trolling me with the notification, boys. So yeah, and then we have This Is Good But Hard to Justify. I'm going to get a lot of shit for this tier, so we'll just start with Berserker. Berserker, it has some damage, it has some more damage, it has this whole rage mechanic. It lost global leech, it's now only attack leech. You're always taking Aspect of Carnage, so you're always taking this 2-pointer. And then you can't get Super Rage and Super Leech without losing Aspect of Carnage. So it's kind of awkward, it has the whole too many nodes problems. And the whole rage mechanic is just wonky. Yes, it does give you a lot of attack speed, but you still have a degen. You still take 10% more damage. So you take 10% more damage and degen like 10% of your life a second at max stacks. You gain a lot of attack speed, but if you just want map clear and movement speed, other Ascendancies give you that. If you just want damage, other Ascendancies give you damage. It just doesn't really... Yeah, it's good, but it's not better than anything else in my opinion. And then we have Raider, and there are a lot of Raiders in chat spamming with notifications. So they nerfed this. This lost 12% movement speed. I already thought Pathfinder was way better than Raider. Yes, they made the Onslaught path better. If you get the Onslaught path, you need to drop the Elemental immunity. or you need to drop the Frenzy Generation. If you get Onslaught, you drop something powerful. As I've proven in a previous video, Gathering Winds makes builds which just want to go fast. This makes it faster. If you're playing a build which doesn't want to invest at all into movement speed, then you'd rather be a Pathfinder. The only reason you played Raider over Pathfinder before was to go super fast. Deadeye can go faster, and Deadeye has more damage on a budget because this 2-pointer is insane damage. This is up to 30% more damage. An extra projectile is basically a more multiplier. Chain is basically a more multiplier. Chain boosts your map clear. Gathering Winds boosts your map clear. This gives you loads of survivability for Molten Strike builds, anything which attacks very rapidly. So yeah, Frostblades, Molten Strike, all of those builds would rather be Deadeye. Bow-based builds, Wanders, they'd rather be Deadeye. And then for the...
autistic as fuck, or a genius.
Thank you. And for the other builds left over, let's say conversion-based Reeve, if you're doing loads of conversion shenanigans, Trickster is still very powerful. Trickster still gives you Frenzy Charge Generation. This is loads of attack speed. And Pathfinder still exists. Raider is fine, but you'd rather be playing, you know, other Ascendancies. And then we have the Elementalist. The Elementalist is just like an absolute, just flaming pile of Elementalist. There are so many things with Elementalist. Now, people were hoping that maybe Ignite would get reworked. If Ignite came back, maybe then Elementalist would be good. Ignite hasn't come back, and just to show you something, even if Ignite has come back, which it hasn't, by the way, Beacon of Ruin is only an elemental prolif range of 12. Do you know what else has a range of 12? Fireball. This is the range that it gives you. That is your prolif range. Now, let's say that you have, you know, a bunch of AoE clusters. Well, now you have a range of 14, which looks like that. Well, now let's say, but Tarke, it's fine because, you know, you have a Carcass Jack on, and then also you get 75% AoE from the minor nodes. Let's just put both of those up to 95%, even though that wouldn't always be active. You then have a range of 18, which is still terrible. So even if Ignite Prolif came back, the Prolif range is really bad that you wouldn't really want to use this. This is annoying situational buff. Mastermind of Discord makes you use Heralds. The main form of defense for builds, thank you, in this part of the tree is Mind Over Matter. If you have Mind Over Matter, you don't want to be reserving mana with Heralds. So this is bad for the main form of defense for builds in this part of the tree. This is only okay for AoE builds and is annoying for AoE builds because of the way that AoE scales. This is decent. This is terrible for Ignite. The one nice thing about this is getting the 20% shock all the time. This does give you Elemental Leech, but you can get just Spell Leech as a Hierophant. And if you're an Elemental attack build, you can get better attack leech from being a Berserker or just getting, you know, the attack nodes on the tree. Or going like Deadeye for life on hit. And yeah, cannot take reflected damage. You can get that as Scion, and as previously mentioned, Reflect isn't even a mechanic. If you're playing a Golem build, sure, you can do that. But you know what's better than Golems? Spectres. Spectres are also cheaper. And then you can do this, which is a good Ascendancy. So, just to summarize at the end, Elementalist is completely and utterly balked. If you play a Raider and a Berserker, they're fine. They're okay. They're good. They're not terrible. Other things are better. Much the same with Chieftain, Gladiator, Assassin, and Slayer. They're good. They have their niche. But this is just kind of better. People ask me what build I want to play. I'm not sure yet. I'm leaning very strongly towards Hierophant Totems, budget-based champion attack stuff, or Kinetic Blast / GC Mines. And also one quick bonus tier, Uberlab or Raider and Slayer. If you're someone who never gets your Uberlab, don't play a Raider, don't play a Slayer. If you're someone who plays SSF and you're worried about unlocking your Uberlab, don't play a Raider, don't play a Slayer. And for anyone who still doesn't like Raider, or likes Raider, I can't help you, watch my videos. I'm Tarke, thank you for all the annoying bastards who spam my bells. Have a good day, fuck you Rise, bye-bye.